The question that I have for you is, what do you think of this latest loss that the Cowboys had against the Jacksonville Jaguars? And do you think that there's any cause of concern with the way that the Cowboys have over the last 2 weeks, with them losing to the Jaguars and damn near losing to the Texans just this prior week before the Jags game?
I mean, absolutely. Trevor Lawrence looked like Tom Brady out there. 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, a 109 passer rating. I mean, aside from his one mistake, which was a terrible interception, and when I say terrible, it was a bad throw. Trevor Lawrence looked incredible. Leadership wise, getting out there animated on the field, making good throws, coming from behind. I mean, he's responsible for a 27-point second half. And they scored 6 points in overtime to win. So, what is that? 33 points in the second half in overtime? The Cowboys had 13. Like, the Cowboys completely faltered, not executing on third down, turning the ball over. The Jaguars defense was finding ways to pressure Dak, get sacks, force turnovers. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was going out there and throwing dots, just throwing people open. Zay Jones had 3 touchdowns. I mean, good lord, it was a just an outright just shootout for a while. And then just, Jacksonville takes over. They capitalize in the fourth quarter with with an errant or mistimed drop by CD, and it kind of just happens that way. And you live and you learn with mistakes like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think Dallas should have been in that situation. I think the panic meter is definitely high. They're going up against the best team in the NFL next week on Christmas Eve in the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, granted, Dallas will be home, but I just can't understand how you have situations like this where you play bad football teams. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are better than the Houston Texans. Let's be transparent here. I think that they have an all around better team between the defensive side of the ball and the quarterback position. But you struggle against Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills, and then you struggle against a up and down Trevor Lawrence. Just not a good look. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna go face Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles next week. Probably the hottest offense, best offensive line, yada yada yada. They didn't look like the best team in the league today with Jalen Hurts having 2 interceptions, but we'll get to that game. Actually, we're not gonna cover that game because it was kind of like meh. But just to kind of look at it from a Jacksonville perspective, I mean, like they had 192 yards on the ground. Dallas couldn't stop the run. Dallas couldn't stop the air. I mean, Dallas's defense is supposed to be one of the best defenses in the league. Obviously, one of the best pass rushing defenses in the league, and Trevor Lawrence was only sacked once. I mean, again, almost 200 yards on the ground. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. To be honest with you, even with like bounty wipes, two ply, like it wouldn't have happened. It just could not happen. And Jacksonville are no scrubs because they also allowed 154 yards on the ground to the Cowboys, and Dak Prescott had 3 touchdowns, but again, he also had those 2 interceptions. So I'm just looking at this. I know Dak only had 7 incompletions, but I don't know if it was the play calling from Kellen Moore that he got too conservative, took his foot off the gas pedal, because at one point Dallas was up by a decent amount until Jacksonville kind of woke up and came back in that third. And I watched the second half of this game to literally just watch Jacksonville creep back and creep back and creep back. And that's legitimately what they did. They capitalized on opportunities. They kicked field goals when they needed to. They were able to score in the red zone when called upon. And again, Zay Jones had 3 of those touchdowns himself. So I'm just kind of looking at this and saying Jacksonville just kind of said, you know what? You're going to keep sleeping on us. You're going to keep disrespecting us. You're not going to give us your all. We're going to come back and we're going to punch you in the mouth. And that's exactly what they did by winning by winning 40-34. Dallas is 10-4, 2 full games behind Philly. Depending on who you ask, it may even be a good 2.5, 3. Again, I don't know the actual statistic because I forget how it works when you beat a divisional opponent. I don't know if that's a half game outright or if that just counts in terms of a tied record. You would just get the ad because you had beaten that team. So that's neither here nor there. What I'm getting at is Dallas going into the biggest game of the season next week, struggling the last couple of weeks. Philly struggling the last couple of weeks as well. Excuse me. Should I say this week? That game on Christmas Eve could very well be very, very, very entertaining for both. But Dallas, it's just not good, man. I say this all the time. They falter when they need to win the most. They falter at the end of the year all the time. There are games where Dak looks stellar. There are games where Dak looks human, and then there's games where Dak is like really? You think that he's better than Jalen Hurts? But again, let's just look at it for what it is. It's an embarrassing loss, a loss that should not have happened. And the defense is 100% to blame in a lot of instances, again, because they could not stop that offense of the Jaguars in any facet of the way. Travis Etienne alone had over 100 yards on the ground, so that speaks volume in and of itself. But overall, kudos to Jacksonville moving on to 6-8, showing that they are still going to be competitive despite the stigma of them being a mediocre football team over the course of the last decade plus. And Dallas, maybe playing down to their opponent in the second half, not taking them serious, falls down to 10-4. And again, with a primetime big matchup against Philly next week, we'll see how that goes moving forward. But again, Dallas definitely should be panicking if you're looking at them moving forward.
Yeah, my panic meter with the Cowboys is slightly rising compared to last week. Last week, I was just in the mindset that they played down to competition with the Texans. They won that game, but you could tell that they could play better than that. But this is another example of the Cowboys playing down to their competition. And in this week particularly, it bit them in the ass, and now they got to take the L for it. And when I looked at Dak Prescott the last couple weeks, Kev, he has not been as solid as he was when he first came back from one of the injuries that he suffered, where he missed a couple weeks earlier in the year. Kevin, the last 4 games, he has 9 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Not the best touchdown to quarterback, not the best touchdown to interception ratio as far as I see it. And when it comes to his overall quarterbacking play, I've always enjoyed Dak Prescott play, and it's because I think he's just so versatile. He can extend plays with his feet. He can throw on the move. He can sit back in the pocket and be able to dice up defenses. Like, he's utilized very well, and his skill set I think really works well with Dallas's offense. But I have to say, just the last couple of weeks, he has definitely been turning the ball over more, and it's had an impact with the Cowboys' offense as far as I've seen it. And Kev, like you said, for them to give up 40 points on the road to a team like the Jaguars, who, let's face it, are a mediocre team. They have their flashes here and there where they can play really well, but for them to put up 40 points against Dallas, who's one of the better teams in the NFC, that's quite impressive for Jacksonville. So I give them a lot of credit for being able to put up that amount of points against Dallas here. But when it comes to Dallas, Dallas was in control of this game. Early on, I thought they played very well. And then, like you said, when that second half started, the Jags just kept creeping back into this game slowly but surely, got this thing to overtime. And all it took was a tip pass by CeeDee Lamb. It falls in the lap of one of their corners, and Jacksonville runs off for a pick six and walks it off and improves to 6-8, like you said. So when it comes to the Cowboys, the next couple games on their slate, they're going to be tricky. Like you said, Kev, they got to play the Eagles next, and probably the biggest game of the year for them. Then they got to go on the road to Tennessee to play the Titans, and then they have a winnable game against the Commanders. So the first 2 games out of these next 3 games on their slate here, they're going to be tricky. These are not automatic wins for them. And the biggest thing for me is if they continue to turn the ball over, especially with Dak playing the way that he's been playing, that could set them behind the 8 ball. And going up against teams like the Eagles and the Eagles and the Titans, excuse me, they can't afford to do that. So I'm still of the mindset that Dallas is a really good team in the NFC this year. But based on years past, I've had that same mindset. And what's happened? They find a way to screw things up over and over and over again. They just find new ways to not be a successful team in the playoffs. And I'll tell you this, they've got, 3 weeks to close out the year. They got to get on some sort of hot streak to at least give me some sort of confidence with them going into the playoffs. I mean, there's a scenario where they could potentially play the Bucks in that wild card round if things were to remain the same based on the next 3 weeks, if the standings were to stay the same. So there's a chance that the Cowboys could do some damage in the playoffs this year if they play their cards right and they play up to snuff. But playing like this in the manner that they did against the Jaguars, a lot of improvement as far as I see it. And frankly, this is a game that I thought that they should have won. So, they're going to look back at the tape on Monday, and we'll see where it kind of goes from here. But when it comes to my overall panic meter with the Cowboys, I think on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm going to say it's around a 4 or a 5 right now. When it came to the Texans last week, it was probably like a 2 or a 3. I would have just kind of chalk that up as an anomaly, but this happens in 2 games in a row. I'm not saying that this is a trend, but it's getting close to that, and we'll see whether or not they can remedy these issues going up against the Eagles, because they need to play A-plus football against the Eagles to possibly win that game. There's no guarantee that they're going to win it, but to me, they got to fix the turnover issues, and the defense has got to play better. So giving up 40 points to the Jags is unacceptable as far as I see it. And going up against the Eagles, I think the Eagles could potentially smell blood in the water, knowing that Dallas is not necessarily at their top strength going into this matchup. So Cowboys got some things to improve on, and they got to do it quick, fast, in a hurry, as far as I see it.